The final fight of Fairy Tail is probably one of the most hated things that the anime and manga community has dunked on for the longest time, as one of the most common things that they call for it is that it is power friendship bullshit and none of it makes sense. How can they defeat Acnologia with how powerful this guy is? He has too many hacks to really be taken down in any believable manner whatsoever. However, if we take a step back, revisit the fight with information from the series that we've known from the start, we can actually piece together that the way he was taken out does actually make a lot of sense with the rules of the universe, as well as what was used to take him down in the first place, as we've had a lot of things to really consider, and a lot went into Acnologia, which a lot of people either don't realize, or they gloss over, or just never notice for some unbelievable reason, or people just never saw the fight and just heard that they won with a combined rainbow fist. Which even that isn't technically correct at the end of the day. But that's what this video is for. I'm going to go over the factors that led to Acnologia's defeat and explain to you guys how all this comes together and makes absolute sense. But before we jump into things, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. It really helps and shows you guys want to see more Fairy Tail on the channel. Now with that out of the way, let's just put out what we know of how the fight started. Acnologia brought all of the Dragon Slayers into the Ravine of Time, or the Space-Time Rift, that after he was pushed into by Anna and Ichia, ended up managing to absorb the power of that rift to gain an unimaginable amount of power. But due to the sheer amount of force and power that this ravine had, Acnologia, after breaking out, had to split himself into two. His physical form, which was driven primarily through his instincts, and his spiritual form, which is where his whole reason and memories all come into place. So from the beginning, he was splitting himself in two, each part of him having half of his power, while still being connected through the power of this rift. Doing so is meant so he can maintain a sort of harmony or equilibrium so that he wouldn't have his power that he now gained go fully out of control. But to keep this power in check, he needed the rest of the Dragon Slayers in order to circulate their magical power within the space-time rift to keep him stabilized. But with the Dragon Slayers managing to break out of the crystals that he placed them in, they all begin to fight him. Now the fight against Acnologia is on two fronts, the Dragon Slayers in the rift, and everybody else in Fiore against his physical form. Now as the Dragon Slayers are fighting and not doing too much against Acnologia at the end of the day, we have Lucy, who comes up with the idea to seal Acnologia within Fairy Sphere, one of the three great fairy spells, as this ability is actually the reason why everyone survived from Acnologia's breath attack on Tenro Island, and it was only with the power and bonds of the members that were on Tenro Island, where Mavis' spirit managed to use that to create Fairy Sphere and activate it, shielding them from Acnologia's attack and keeping them in stasis for 7 long years. And since it managed to tank an attack from Acnologia, it would only be natural that this would be strong enough to hold him in, alongside the other factors of actually abusing the one main weakness that many Dragon Slayers, primarily first generation and third generation Dragon Slayers, have, and that is their motion sickness. Being on a vehicle of any sort gives them intense vertigo, causing them to lose balance and wanting to vomit. So the plan is to use that weakness, get Acnologia's physical form on a boat, and seal him within Fairy Sphere, using the magic to seal him away, and warping the time within so that Acnologia would not be able to move. And since the physical body is linked to his spiritual body, with one side getting weakened, the spiritual form would end up feeling the effects as well. Everything comes down to Acnologia getting pushed onto the ice boat that was made and undergoing vertigo. And thus, Lucy uses everybody in Harjion Port's magical power to seal Acnologia in Fairy Sphere. However, that initial magical power isn't enough to keep him still. Yes, it is starting to affect him, but it is not going to do much with the power that they had on hand. It isn't until Merity shows up showcasing that she has linked everybody in the continent, every wizard in the continent, having their magical power pulled into Lucy so she can channel and create Fairy Sphere using all of that magical power, manages to use the power of the entire continent to start to seal away Acnologia. And here's one thing I do want to mention that not many people tend to understand. Acnologia is the arcane dragon. He is supposed to eat magic, so why isn't he eating Fairy Sphere? Well, it's actually very simple if we look at context clues throughout the series. In fact, previously in this arc, Irene briefly fought Acnologia and used her enchantment magic to change the properties of the air. However, since this was made by magic, you would just ask yourself, why didn't Acnologia eat it? Well, the changing of the property of air was really a side effect of the spell, and since Acnologia within Fairy Sphere, as being within Fairy Sphere causes a distortion in time, and keeps everything within in stasis. Acnologia is affected by the side effects of spells, but since it's an active spell that is targeting straight onto him and is just targeting this general area, he is not able to eat it. You could also say the same thing with his fight against Igneal. Him and Igneal fought, but Acnologia never ate Igneal's flame. Though at that point, it was never revealed that Acnologia was the Arcane Dragon, the fact that Acnologia didn't bother trying to eat Igneal's magical flames shows that dragon magic, if not Dragon Slayer magic, could not be eaten by Acnologia at the time. So the side effect of Fairy Sphere to distort the space of that general area affects Acnologia on a physical basis, which causes his movements to slow down and causing him to not move, thus weakening his physical body in the space-time rift. Now, on the fight against the spiritual side, yes, the Dragon Slayers aren't doing too much in terms of actually damaging Acnologia. Only Natsu keeps getting back up. Now, obviously with Natsu's main power being the Flame of Emotion, his power increases with his intense emotions. Not to mention we have Wendy enchanting Natsu with all of the magical power and force of the rest of the Dragon Slayers, increasing Natsu's power even more. Combine that with the fact that enchantment magic that Wendy is being used to also buff Natsu, this could also be treated as a type of unison raid. Now, unison raids, if we remember from the course of the series through the instances that we've seen it, is that when wizards have their thoughts and emotions in sync as they attack at the same time, their abilities can actually merge together to create an even more powerful form of magical attack, multiplying its destructive power even more. Some key instances of this are when Lucy and Juve used this for the first time in Tower of Heaven, when Team Natsu used it against Master Hades on Tenro Island, Sting and Rogue combining the magical attacks, that is a unison raid as well. Those are the key and most memorable uses of the unison raid, since all the magical power is being important to Natsu through the spell enchantment that Wendy is doing, and since all of their thoughts and emotions are synced for this one singular purpose to take down Acnologia, this would increase the power of Natsu in this last-ditch attack exponentially, adding in Natsu's Flame of Emotion with his flaming emotions, boosting his power even more. And as Natsu begins to attack, Acnologia in the spiritual plane begins to feel the side effects of Fairy Sphere as it's weakening his physical body, plus the vertigo of being on a vehicle, causing his body to not move as he wanted it to and losing strength. Add that to the fact that during this fight, Natsu, when he talks about dragons and them being kind, and Acnologia getting flashbacks to his tragic past and how dragons have destroyed his life, ends up going on a bloodthirsty berserker rage, not thinking clearly, not thinking strategically, not even playing around with his food. All he wants to do is destroy, going on a berserker rampage. And in this instance, he can't think clearly. So when Natsu charges up his attack, powered up by everybody and his Flame of Emotions as a unison raid, Acnologia, beginning to feel the weakness of Fairy Sphere in that realm and not thinking clearly, instead of perhaps dodging out of the way, he ends up turning around to try and block it with his left arm. Except, Igneal ripped that off back during Tartarus. With everything combined, Acnologia forgot that he was missing his left arm and gave Natsu an even wider opening to land a massive blow against him, knocking him back into the time stream. Now, you might think that that was the reason that Acnologia was defeated, and that was a part of it, but Natsu wasn't truly the one that killed Acnologia, because remember, throughout this entire fight, it has been stated that Acnologia is trying to maintain a sense of equilibrium with his physical and spiritual body. Since his physical body is being weakened and its strength being zapped by Fairy Sphere, alongside Natsu dealing enough of a damaging blow to Acnologia, this instance causes the space-time rift to essentially disintegrate him. Acnologia disappears within the space-time rift as his grip on it begins to slip throughout the course of the fight due to all of these different circumstances. Thus, how he was defeated and died at the end of the series. Now, one last point that I know people are going to bring up, but because once again, Acnologia is your arcane dragon, how are Natsu's abilities working on him? Now, I did explain how Fairy Sphere wasn't affecting him, and I did briefly mention this when I talked about Igneel, but Dragon Slayers actually aren't fully immune to other types of magic that are themselves. If they are strong enough, they can affect them to an extent. Dragon Slayers have a resistance against their element. Acnologia has a strong resistance against magical attacks, but because he's so strong, they virtually have no effect on him. However, due to Igneel being able to fight off against Acnologia, shows that dragon attacks, and by extension, as we've seen, Dragon Slayer magic, since Dragon Slayer magic is made to counteract and defeat dragons and affect them, can affect Acnologia. Since what Natsu is using is a Dragon Slayer based attack, he can bypass Acnologia's initial defenses and deal actual damage to him. Because all Dragon Slayer magic does is allow these specific attacks to actually injure dragons. Not to mention, Dragon Slayer magic is lost magic. Lost types of magic are actually incredibly powerful and boosts the initial magical attacks of characters by an exponential amount, as was stated by Gray back when he tried to use Iced Lost Shell against Xerath, to boost its strength to the point of actually being able to permanently seal Xerath away at the cost of his life and erasing his existence from all of everyone's memories and even reality, making it as though he never existed. Dragon Slayer magic is a form of lost magic, and thus the elemental abilities of Dragon Slayer magic are boosted by this type of lost magic, makes this final attack by Natsu a lot more potent and powerful than people would initially think. Thus, being the reason why Acnologia lost enough of a grip on himself in the spiritual plane, alongside his physical, to be devoured and erased by the space-time rift, thus allowing the rest of the Dragon Slayers to be spewed out of the space-time rift, since they were no longer needed there. And that is the reason Acnologia was defeated. There was a lot that I went through in this video, a lot of factors, a lot of rules of the fairy tale verse that had to go into talking about it. It took an entire nation's magical power being pulled together into a giant protective / sealing spell, took the Dragon Slayers essentially doing a combined unison raid, plus enchantment, Natsu's Flames of Emotion, amping up his strength as well, the fact that Dragon Slayer magic can affect dragons to a large extent, side effects of magic can affect Acnologia, especially if it's strong enough, the weakness to vehicles with the motion sickness aka vertigo that Dragon Slayers have, the fact that lost magic boosts the magical power attacks of anybody that's using it, and the fact that Dragon Slayer magic can affect Acnologia and dragon attacks can affect Acnologia, all being topped off with the fact that since Acnologia in both planes was knocked off his axis and sense of equilibrium, allowed him to be erased by the space-time rift itself that he was trying to maintain. Especially during the fact that the Dragon Slayers weren't circulating his magical power like he initially intended, plus him going on a berserker rage to the point where, when he sensed an ounce of weakness, defaulted on a missing arm out of instinct, forgetting that he lost that limb, allowing Natsu to gain an upper hand with that one hit, and him getting erased. A lot went into taking out Acnologia that nobody really sits down and really considers, and while I do agree that this fight could have either been a bit longer, Natsu could have gone into Dragon Force, in my opinion, to help boost it a bit more, the fight itself made a lot of sense, and I do kind of prefer the anime's version of the fight, as it does have a bit more scenes showcasing the Dragon Slayer struggle, outside of a few just impact panels and actually showcasing the fight. But overall, the fight itself and how it concluded makes sense. A lot went into Acnologia's defeat, a lot was needed to be considered due to the rules and previous establishments of this world's power system and events that happened in this very arc as well that were meant to allude to how Acnologia was going to be defeated. Now, in my personal opinion, I do think Mashima did kind of screw up by making Acnologia a bit too strong with the space-time rift. But with the way he dealt with it, even though I think he brought himself into a corner, was very smart and makes sense with what we know about the world of Fairy Tail and everything he has built up until this point. You can be disappointed on how you feel about this fight. That is honestly your opinion and you're free to do so. But everything leading up to this and how it was executed does make sense, and I really hope I brought that upon for you guys. I hope you came out of this with a better understanding of not just this fight, but also the powers brought into place by Fairy Tail and what was previously established. I hope to do more videos like this in the future, so let me know if you like this type of video. I want to go back and actually think over how certain fights in Fairy Tail played out, especially the more controversial ones by either haters or fans that were disappointed in certain aspects of it, and break them down as to how they were set up and executed and how they made sense in the narrative. But that's my thoughts on things. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below, and let me know if I missed anything in this video in terms of this explanation. And with that out of the way, like and subscribe, hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and ensures you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And I hope you all have an awesome day. Even with all that to consider, I still think Acnologia is probably the strongest character in the Fairy Tail verse even now, especially during the fact that his power was technically split between two separate bodies. If the two of them were together, he'd probably be even stronger and would have needed a lot more to take him down, in my opinion. But I could be overthinking things.